I didn't expect a crowd at my father's wake. He wasn't a people person, never had friends over, never talked about family. The only stories I ever heard about his past were the ones I pried out of him during our rare late-night talks, half-true memories, filtered through bourbon and grief. So when the wake filled up with faces I didn't recognize, neighbors, coworkers, distant cousins, I just assumed they came out of respect. Small town, quiet man. Death draws curiosity. That's when she arrived. She was standing in the hallway of the funeral home, right next to the wall of black and white photos I'd arranged. She wore a green wool coat buttoned all the way up to her neck, even though it was June. Her white blonde hair was pinned in a tight twist, not a strand out of place. And she was staring at a photo of me as a child, one of the only ones I could find. The second our eyes met, I felt it. Recognition. Not mine, hers. She smiled, like she'd been waiting. "You don't remember me, do you?" she asked gently. I gave her a polite, confused smile. "I'm sorry." Her voice dropped to a whisper, intimate and familiar. "I raised you, Adam. From when you were born until you were 6. You used to call me Mama Beth." Everything inside me recoiled. "What? I think you have me mistaken for someone else," I said, a little firmer this time. "I lived with my dad my whole life. Just us. No one else." Her smile faltered for a second. "Just barely." "Of course," she said softly. "That's what he wanted you to believe." She reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph, creased and yellowed with age. It was a picture of a boy around 5 years old, sitting in a plastic wading pool, wearing swim goggles and holding up a soggy popsicle. The boy was me. Same dimpled chin. Same lopsided grin. But I had never seen that photo before in my life. And standing behind me in the photo, her hands gently resting on my shoulders, was her. I stared at the photo for several seconds, trying to make sense of it. The backyard wasn't familiar. The house in the background wasn't ours. The clothes I was wearing didn't match any I remembered from childhood. "How?" I managed. She touched my arm, tenderly. "You lived with me. Before your father took you away. You were 6. He told the courts I was unstable, that I had delusions. But I never stopped loving you." I felt like the floor shifted beneath me. My ears rang like I was underwater. "Why now?" I asked. "Why come here?" "Because he's gone. And you deserve the truth." Before I could respond, one of the staff announced they were closing the room for the evening. The guests slowly filtered out, offering condolences and nods. The woman, Beth, if that was her name, handed me the photo and left without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the photo under the yellow light of my kitchen. I even compared it to other pictures from my early years. The resemblance was undeniable. That was me. I called my aunt, my dad's younger sister, who lived 2 states away. We hadn't spoken in years, but I needed answers. "Aunt May," I said, "do you remember anyone named Beth? Someone who used to take care of me?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Why are you asking about her?" she said, cautiously. "Because she showed up at Dad's wake. She said she raised me until I was 6. May sighed. "Your father never wanted you to know. He thought it was better that way. So it's true." I asked. "Some of it," she said, hesitantly. "Your mom died in childbirth. Your dad, he wasn't doing well after that. He left you with a neighbor for a few months. That woman, Beth, wasn't just a babysitter. She kind of became your mother. But things got weird. Your dad came back one day and just took you. Wouldn't talk about it. Wouldn't let anyone mention her again." "What do you mean weird?" "She changed. Started acting strange. Talking about visions. Said you had a purpose. That you weren't like other kids." My skin crawled. "She tried to come back for you once," May continued. "Said something about unfinished work. Your dad got a restraining order. That night, I had a dream. I was in a hallway. Long, endless. Lit by a single, flickering bulb. I could hear someone crying behind a door, small, childlike sobs. I moved toward it, but the door wouldn't open. The crying stopped. And then a voice whispered, 'You remember now, don't you?' I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. The photo was still on the nightstand. Only now, there was something new in it. A second photo tucked behind the first. I pulled it out with shaking fingers. It was a picture of a birthday cake. 6 candles. A knife mid-slice. And my name scrawled in red frosting across the top. The woman stood behind me, smiling. And next to her, just barely visible in the shadows, was another figure. Tall. Blurred. Watching. I took the 2 photos and slid them into an envelope, then placed it in the drawer next to my bed. I wasn't ready to look at them anymore, not after that dream or whatever that was. The figure in the shadows had left a mark in my mind, not just visually, emotionally. It felt familiar in the way a smell from childhood might punch you in the gut, like something that had once been locked away was scratching its way back out. The next morning, I called in sick. I told my job I needed time after the funeral. It wasn't a lie. I did need time. But more than that, I needed answers. If both had raised me until I was 6, where had we lived? The photo, the one with the wading pool, offered clues. I scanned the background, a wooden fence, a shed with a slanted roof, and a tall cluster of pine trees. Not many places around here had trees like that. I remembered my dad once said we lived out by Hollow Creek before moving closer to town. I drove out that way, down a winding rural road that twisted through thickets and broken fences. Most of the houses were either collapsed or abandoned, but one stood out. A narrow, 2-story farmhouse hidden behind a line of dense pines. Its windows were shuttered. The paint had peeled into scales. And yet, it wasn't abandoned. There was a new mailbox, and tire tracks in the dirt. I parked across the road and stared at it for a while. Then I got out. As I approached the gate, I caught movement in the window. A curtain shifting. A shadow behind the glass. Before I could knock, the door opened. She was already waiting. "You came," Beth said. Not surprised. Almost like she'd been expecting me the whole time. I didn't know what to say. My throat was dry. I had questions. "Of course you do," she said softly. "Come in." The inside of the house felt preserved, like no time had passed at all. The wallpaper was old but clean. The carpet flattened where furniture had stood for decades. The air smelled like lavender and dust. Photos lined the walls, not just of me, of other children. Children I didn't recognize. Beth led me to the living room and motioned for me to sit. She moved slowly, carefully, as if every step mattered. On the coffee table were 3 teacups already prepared, though only 2 of us were present. I didn't comment. Instead, I asked, "Why did he take me?" Her eyes softened. "Because I started remembering." "Remembering what?" Beth took a long sip of tea before answering. "You weren't born the way others are," she said carefully. "You didn't cry when you were delivered. You just looked at me. Your eyes weren't newborn eyes. They were too focused, too knowing." I shifted in my seat. She continued. "At first, I thought it was trauma. Maybe something genetic. But then strange things began happening. Lights flickering when you were upset. Animals avoiding you. Dreams that weren't mine filling my head at night. My hands curled into fists. You're saying I was cursed?" Beth shook her head. "No, not cursed. Chosen." That word hit something deep. A word I didn't want. A word I didn't understand. You started speaking to something that wasn't there. Drawing symbols I couldn't recognize. And every night, the same phrase, "He watches from the wall." I stood up. "I think I've heard enough." But Beth didn't move. Her voice remained calm, almost mournful. "When your father came to take you, I let him. I was scared. You had changed. There was something in your eyes by then, something older. Something watching from inside." I backed toward the door. "You should go now," she said gently. "But not before I give you something." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a wooden box, small and rectangular, with intricate carvings I couldn't decipher. She held it out to me. "This belonged to your mother. Before she passed." I froze. I thought she died in childbirth. "She did. But she left this for you. She said you'd need it one day." I took the box reluctantly. It was lighter than expected, almost empty. I didn't open it, not yet. That night, back at home, I stared at the box for hours before finally lifting the lid. Inside was a folded note and a single silver key. The note read, "You'll know the door when it calls to you. But once it's open, you can't go back." No signature. No date. Just that sentence. I didn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. An unknown number. No message. Just a location pin. Coordinates. When I opened the map, I felt my stomach tighten. It was the woods, near Hollow Creek, right behind Beth's house. I told myself I wasn't going. I told myself this was madness. But by 3:20 a.m., I was in my car, flashlight in hand, the silver key burning cold in my pocket. The trees swallowed my headlights. The forest was unnaturally silent. No wind, no insects, no rustling. Just the crunch of my own footsteps on damp leaves. Eventually, I found it. A stone door. Not a building. Just a door. Standing alone. Ancient. Covered in moss and roots. A symbol carved into the center. The same symbol I'd drawn in my dreams as a child. The same one I'd seen faintly carved into the underside of the box. My hand moved to the key. I didn't know why, but I knew it would fit. And as I stepped closer, a whisper moved through the trees like a breath behind my ear. Come home. I don't remember turning the key. I just remember the sound. Not a click, not a creak, but a sigh, low and ancient, like the earth itself exhaling. The stone door didn't swing open like something out of a movie. It dissolved. The surface rippled, dark and shimmering like oil on water, and then it was gone. What lay beyond it wasn't a room or a tunnel. It was darkness, but not like night. This darkness had weight, like it was pressing outward, fighting to stay contained. And still, I stepped forward. Not because I was brave, not because I wanted to, but because a part of me already knew this place. The first few steps felt like falling. Not physically, but in my thoughts, in my memory. Images flickered behind my eyes. A child's room, painted green. A mobile spinning above a crib, shaped like crescent moons. A tall man with blurred features, reaching out with something sharp. The same phrase again. He watches from the wall. Then the darkness parted, and I was inside something that resembled a cathedral, not one made by human hands. There were no bricks, no mortar. The walls were bone white, pulsing like living tissue, and the ceiling stretched into infinity. The air smelled metallic. Not blood, but memory. In the center of the room stood a mirror, cracked, ancient, and surrounded by carved symbols that throbbed faintly with heat. I stepped toward it, but as I moved, I realized I wasn't alone. Something was standing behind the mirror. Something tall, watching. Its reflection shimmered, but when I looked directly, there was nothing there. I whispered, "What is this place?" And a voice, not from around me, but from inside me, answered, "Your first home." I don't know how long I stood there. Time didn't flow normally in that space. Minutes stretched into hours. The mirror pulsed softly, and images flickered across its fractured surface. Me, as a child, drawing that same symbol over and over again on the walls of a room I didn't remember. Beth, crying into her hands while shadows swirled behind her. My father, burning something in the fireplace, pages torn from a book bound in skin. I turned away. The images stopped, and that's when I saw it. A doorway on the other side of the cathedral. A perfect rectangle, pitch black. From it came the sound of breathing. Shallow, childlike, familiar. I stepped through. The room on the other side was small. Wood-paneled walls. A single bed. A lamp with a duck-shaped base. Toys scattered across the floor. I knew this room. This was my room. From before. From before my father took me away. But it was off. The colors were wrong. The toys were melted, slightly sagging like wax in the sun. And on the bed sat a child. Me. Or a version of me. 6 years old. Pale. Eyes too large. He looked up, and for a moment, I thought he might smile. But then he said, in a voice that didn't belong to a child, "You left me here." My throat tightened. I didn't know. "You forgot," he said flatly. "You chose to forget. You let him take you." And I had to stay. A shiver ran down my spine. "Who are you?" He stood, slowly. "I'm the part of you that never left. The part that remembered. The part that waited." He walked toward me, and his face began to shift, aging, warping, becoming more angular. Not demonic. Not monstrous. Just wrong. Like a mask that wasn't made for a human face. "You don't belong out there," he whispered. "You belong here. With me." I stumbled backward, heart racing. This wasn't a memory. This was a trap. I turned and bolted back through the door, through the cathedral, through the liquid threshold that had once been stone. The world snapped back. Trees. Dirt. Night air. Stars. And the door was gone. Only moss and stone remained. I collapsed beside my car, hands shaking. The box was still in my pocket. The note. The key. All still real. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove back to Beth's house. It was gone. Not just empty, gone. No mailbox. No tire tracks. No house. Just trees. Untouched. Like nothing had ever been built there at all. I called the county clerk's office, the records department, even the zoning office. They had no record of a house at that address. Nothing under Beth's name. No Beth living anywhere in the county. It was like she had never existed. I returned home, numb. Inside my apartment, the lights flickered. I froze. The air had changed. Cooler, heavier. I moved to the living room, heart pounding, and stopped dead. The mirror above the fireplace, an ordinary decorative one, was cracked. Exactly like the one in the cathedral. And scrawled across it, Written in condensation like breath on glass, were 4 words. He watches from inside. I dropped the box. The key slid across the floor and came to a stop beneath the couch. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I locked every door, turned on every light, and sat awake until dawn. And still, I could feel it, something stirring behind the walls. Watching. Waiting. I didn't go to work. Didn't answer my phone. Didn't even open the blinds. For 3 days, I stayed inside my apartment with the lights on and the mirrors covered. But even with every reflective surface hidden, I still felt it. That pressure. Like I was sharing space with something I couldn't see. The cracked mirror over my fireplace hadn't fixed itself, and the condensation message had faded, but I knew it hadn't been a dream. The box, the key, the photos, all still real. Undeniable. And the worst part? My memories were changing. Not drastically, subtly. Quietly. Like they were rearranging themselves at the edges. I'd remember a childhood birthday party, then doubt if it ever happened. I'd recall my father's voice, but forget the words. Even music sounded off. A song I loved in high school played differently, just enough to make me pause. Reality was bending. Or maybe it always had been. On the 4th night, I got another message. Not a call. Not a knock. This time, it was a letter, slid under my door. Unmarked envelope. Inside, 1 page. It's not over. You left something behind. There was an address scribbled in red ink. No name. No return info. I looked it up. It was a nursing facility outside Ashridge, about 40 miles away. A place called Juniper Hills. Private. Quiet. Specialized in complex memory cases. I didn't want to go. Every bone in my body told me to burn the letter and forget. But I couldn't. Because I knew, without understanding how, that this was where the answers were. The drive out to Ashridge felt like moving backwards in time. Gas stations got older. Roads cracked and narrowed. The signage became sparse. And finally, at the edge of a dead forest, I saw it, a white brick building with a sagging green roof. Juniper Hills. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I gave her the name on the letter. Her brows furrowed. "We don't usually allow walk-ins, Mr. Hale." "How did you know my name?" She tapped the monitor once. "Because your name's on the visitor list. Scheduled 2 days ago." I hadn't made that appointment. She handed me a badge. Room 12. Down the hall, to the right. Room 12 was dimly lit and smelled like old rain. Inside, a single bed, a window with sealed blinds, and an old woman, thin and gray-skinned, strapped to a reclined wheelchair. She didn't move as I entered, didn't blink, but I recognized her instantly. It was Beth. Older, much older than just a few days. Frylea. Her face gaunt, her eyes sunken deep into their sockets, like she had aged 30 years overnight. I stood frozen in the doorway. Then her lips moved. Barely. "Adam." I stepped forward. "How?" She coughed, a dry, wheezing sound. "They found me. After you left." Said I broke the circle. "What are you talking about?" Beth's head twitched, like it took effort to lift it. "You were never supposed to leave through that door. Not without permission. Not without him letting go." "Who is he?" Beth laughed. It was a brittle, broken sound. Not a who. What? He's what remains. The thing that clings. I felt the key burning in my pocket again. She looked toward the window. "You took a piece of him with you. That's why things are cracking. He's still inside you." The floor felt unsteady beneath me. My thoughts swam. "I don't understand." Beth's voice dropped to a whisper. "You will. Soon. But before that, you have to remember the 3rd house." I blinked. "What?" "There was the house with your father. Then mine. But before both of us, there was another. The house you were born in." I shook my head. "I was born in the hospital." "No," she said firmly, her voice suddenly clearer. "You were born in the 3rd house, the one even your father forgot. The house where the binding was done. The house with no reflections." Beth gripped my hand. Her skin was cold as stone. "You need to find it. Before the mirror inside you turns completely." And then her body convulsed. Her eyes rolled back. The machines beeped once and went flat. She was gone. I drove back in a daze. What was the 3rd house? There had never been talk of one. Even in the few records I'd seen, birth certificate, old bills, county forms, there was no mention of any address before my father's cabin near Hollow Creek. Unless something had erased it. That night, I tore through the box again. Inside the lining, beneath the velvet, I found it, a second note, much older, brittle with time. "If you forget me, the house will fade. But the roots will always remember." Attached was a faded photo. A house made of red brick, no visible address. And in the corner of the image, scribbled in pen, Sycamore Lane. Before the fire, I searched every record I could find. Nothing in the last 30 years. But then I found it. An article from 1989. Local fire. Rural land. 1 fatality. No survivors. Address, Sycamore Lane, just outside Hollow Creek. The house had burned to the ground. Nothing but foundations and ash remained. I drove out the next morning. The road was almost invisible now, overgrown with weeds and branches. But at the end of it, something remained. Not a house, but the outline of one. The foundation was still there, blackened and cracked. And in the center of the ruins stood something that should not have survived. A mirror. Freestanding. Untouched. It wasn't dusty. It wasn't cracked. It reflected me perfectly. And then it didn't. The reflection blinked when I didn't, smiled when I stayed still, and then walked away, fading into the background of the mirror like a ghost stepping into a forest. And I was left standing there, alone, facing glass that now reflected nothing at all. I stood at the edge of the ruins on Sycamore Lane, staring at the mirror that no longer showed my reflection. The wind moved through the broken trees like whispers. The soil beneath my feet felt warm, too warm, and smelled faintly of something metallic. The silence was thick, like the world itself was holding its breath. I took a step closer. The mirror remained blank, black as pitch. I waved my hand in front of it. Nothing. No reflection. No light. Just that void. And yet, something was moving behind it. Not in the glass, but through it. Shapes. Shadows. A hallway. The same flickering bulb from my dreams. It was calling me back. The note in the box, the key, Beth's last words. Everything had led me here. So I did the one thing I never thought I would. I stepped through. The sensation wasn't like passing through a doorway. It was like falling underwater without ever hitting the surface. My ears popped. My skin buzzed. Time vanished. Then I was standing in a room that looked exactly like my childhood bedroom, only off. The corners of the ceiling curved unnaturally. The air was thick, syrupy. The walls pulsed slightly with a rhythm, like a heartbeat just beneath plaster. And on the bed was a child. Not 6-year-old me this time. A newer version. 8, maybe 9. He turned and looked up. I wonder when you'd come back, he said. His voice was soft. Calm. Mine. What is this place? He gestured to the walls. This is where you were made. Not born made. Crafted. Bound. Your father didn't just take you from Beth. He took you from the binding. The what? The old ones needed a vessel. Something soft. Young. Unfinished. You were perfect. But your father knew. He saw what was waiting behind the veil. That's why he burned this place. I shook my head. This is insane. No, the boy said, rising to his feet. This is your origin. You weren't stolen. You were rescued. He walked toward me slowly, his steps not making a sound. But you couldn't stay away. Because the house remembers. The mirror remembers. And now, so do you. Suddenly, the walls began to bleed light. Harsh, red, flickering. Shapes moved beyond them. Arms, hands, something much larger. Watching. You still have the key, don't you? The boy asked. I pulled it from my pocket. It felt heavier now. Hot. Almost pulsing. He nodded. There's one last door. Behind me, a new one had appeared. Blackwood. No handle. Just a keyhole. You can end this, the boy said. Or you can remember everything. But you can't do both. I stepped toward the door. Wait, I said. What happens if I choose to remember? The boy's face shifted again. No longer mine, Beth's. Pale. Hollow. And behind her eyes, something vast and ancient stirred. If you choose to remember, she said, you'll understand what you really are. I turned the key. The door opened inward, slowly, silently, and revealed a vast space beyond it. Not a room. Not a house. A field of mirrors. Dozens. Hundreds. All cracked. All occupied. Inside each one, a version of me. Older. Younger. Twisted. Some crying. Some staring blankly. Some screaming in silence. Some was smiling. The truth hit me like a wave. None of us had made it out. Each of us had found the house. The door. The choice. And each of us had made a different one. From the center of the mirror field, something rose. A figure. Humanoid. Shifting. Made of reflections, eyes, hands, teeth. All moving. All watching. The figure extended a hand. Come back to the center, it whispered. We've been waiting. I took a step back. No. The figure flickered. The mirrors began to hum. "You are the breach," it said. "You opened the door. You let us in. We only need one you to stay and one to leave." Behind me, the doorway to the outside world still stood open. The choice: stay or leave. I clenched the key so tight my palm bled, and I made my decision. I ran, straight through the door, through the blackness, through the air that felt like it was clawing at me, trying to drag me back. I stumbled into the ruins on Sycamore Lane and collapsed, gasping for breath. It was morning. The mirror was gone. So was the foundation. Only scorched earth remained. That night, I slept. And for the first time in years, I dreamed of nothing. No walls. No voices. No mirrors. Just quiet. It's been 6 weeks. Things have changed. People at work say I'm different. My eyes look darker. My voice sounds calmer. Even strangers glance at me with hesitation. I try not to think about the boy, or Beth, or the mirror field. But sometimes, I catch a flicker in glass, in a store window, in the back of my phone, a movement I didn't make, a smile I didn't give. And late at night, I whisper to myself, I left something behind. But the truth is, something followed me out.